My religious sister unalived her severely sick son by praying for him instead of calling the ambulance, and is now serving jail time for second-degree murder. My sister is a religious lunatic, so much so that she cut off our mother at 18 when wasn't willing to convert to Christianity. She met and married her husband in her church when she was 20 years old, but they were unable to conceive. My sister believed that she couldn't conceive because this was God's punishment for her cutting off her mother, so she reached out to our mom again and made amends. After making amends and still not being able to conceive, she convinced herself that it was because she had a heretic in her life, so she cut her off again. I, on the other hand, am a Christian and a believer, so my sister was still in contact with me, but since I wasn't as holy in her eyes, kept the contact to a minimum. Anyways, my sister ended up adopting a boy named Joe when he was 3 years old, and they raised him in the ways of the Lord. She didn't send him to school, but rather homeschooled and taught him about the Bible and Christ, because my sister and her husband didn't trust schools. They thought their kid would be indoctrinated, and they saw God as the only way forward. The boy was not allowed to have any friends who were not Christian either. I tried to talk to them about loosening their grip on the kid, but my sister threatened to cut me off if I told her how to parent, so I stayed away. In hindsight, this ended up being the biggest mistake of my entire life. When Joe was 7 years old, he was diagnosed with pancreatitis and acute sepsis, which can lead to literal organ failure and death. This, of course, should be taken very seriously, as the kid is a very serious risk if this happens. However, my sister and her husband opted to treat him themselves because they had issues going to doctors and were concerned about the medications they would prescribe, so they decided to have faith instead. They did some research online and diagnosed Joe, despite having no medical experience, with a brain injury, PTSD, and fetal alcohol syndrome. The thing is, Joe was in seriously bad shape, refusing to eat or drink water, refusing to sleep, and was throwing himself down the stairs. But my sister and her husband still didn't take him to the hospital. After a week of this, they left Joe with a caretaker while they went on a weekend holiday together. Upon returning, they found Joe laying on the floor, passed out, with the caretaker not knowing what to do, as according to the caretaker, Joe passed out a minute ago. He offered to call the ambulance, but my sister and her husband refused, instead choosing to gather in a circle and pray for his recovery, and even go as far as drizzling olive oil on him. They put him to bed and told the caretaker they would take care of it, and asked him not to call the ambulance. After sleeping through the night, my sister and husband found Joe without a pulse, covered in vomit. They called the ambulance at that point, but it was too late. My sister and her husband both ended up getting 15 years in prison.